Hello and welcome. 1.2, the new update is here. We've got Rifted mode playable in campaign and survival. The $1,000,000 question is what to go for first. There's a bunch of new armor that gets you a bunch of new defense types, fusion damage for your synthesized armor, for your DSTs and your flame bursts and all that stuff. Speaking of DSTs, I think that's the top priority to get a fusion set, a synthesized set for. But also a synthesized Draketooth is a top priority. In fact, I would argue you should go get one of these first and foremost, and then go around and get each piece of synthesized primitive to get some fusion DSTs, because they are going to help you take down bosses in Rifted mode. Easy peasy. So I'm going to do just that. That's what we're going to do for this video. First, I'm going to go over and get a synthesized Draketooth from the summit. Massacre campaign, Rifted hardcore. I'm going to use a regular Draketooth for that, and I'll throw my regular armor back on and we'll DST it up. DST spam works as good as ever in the Rifted mode of campaign summit massacre for Draketooth farming. We're going to go do just that right now. I'm going to jump into it. Oh, and one thing I would recommend, because I'm going to go through how I do this, and I play through with the active hero as the apprentice for the first 2 waves of that campaign run. I'm just going to jump right into it here. Campaign. And I'll cut this up and show you the highlights here, but you know what you need to know is sort of the execution for this build. The way I go through and do it wave by wave, I think, is a good idea. I've got a build that I've been using for a while to easily farm Draketooths, and I have a lot of faith in the build. Just to show my stats, if it's worth knowing, I have quite high stats, I guess. I'm well over, I'm over 8k power here. You don't need super high stats to do this. It's you're gonna lay down a bunch of DSTs to get this done. They're gonna do most of the damage. You can have way less. Actually, you know what? I'll take the giraffe off. I'll take the accessories off. So far lower stats here. Let's try it with that. I'm sure it'll be as well. So if you've got more like this for stats, you can try it out. My boost monk, your stats don't really matter here either, because the DSTs again are going to do a lot of the work, and you're going to be able to boost them and get a lot more value out of them. I'm also going to go in with some darkness traps and I'm going to have a buff beam. Let's take the stuff off of her too. Lower buff beam here as well. Why not? I'll have a buff beam, and then I'm also going to at some point swap in my waller to lay down some walls also for an EV. A couple of 3D EV walls. I've got a lot of Ford here. Let's bump that down too. So I'm under 7k. So I'm just going to lower my stats just to show that the build works. You don't have to have crazy end game stats. So I'm going to get into it here. I'm going to play the first 2 waves on my apprentice and lay down some DSTs. I'm going to use this little line of hieroglyph on the ground as a reference point. I'm going to cover 2 stairwells in the front there. And we're going to have a big old line of DSTs. And they're going to be on a giant buff beam. That's the plan here. And I'll show what I do here is I just barely tag that gargoyle on the left. And then I basically mirror that. I think this build, I think Mel showed me this, actually. Just barely tagging the gargoyle. Shout out to Melifos. Don't need the waller yet. So get the beamer back in. And I'm going to drop a large buff beam right along this little hieroglyph thing here. That looks good. That way I can lay down DSTs all along this, and they'll get the buff beam. So I'm going to hang on to this mana and G it up here, and I'll overdrive these just to burn everything down nice and quick at first. The way these waves go, you end up with a few enemies at the very end that take a while to come out. So you can kind of wait, and then once you're down to 4 enemies left, once everything's dead, there you go. You can go around and collect mana, and it stalls for quite a bit of time here, so you've got plenty of time to do that. And I'm just going to run around and collect all the mana first. So I've collected all of the mana, and the final enemies are just now starting to spawn in. That gives me a little bit of time to get the jump on laying down some more DSTs. And the name of the game here is getting the stuff down, making sure it's on the beam, and being effective with the way you use the build phases here. I am way too meticulous with this stuff. You don't need to be super precise. As long as it's on the beam, it's fine. And the beam is pretty generous, in my opinion, in terms of how far away things can be and still get the buff beam. So there's a few other things we want to put down as a sort of priority as well. So I'm going to leave it at 8 DSTs, and I'm going to throw down some reflect walls here. I do like some 1D reflect walls, kind of encasing this stack here, and these are a bit meticulous to put down as well, so I'm going to get them out of the way now. We do want to be on the apprentice, so I'm going to swap back over, and I can overdrive to give these a bit of a boost, help them take down the enemies. Wave 2 is very similar to Wave 1. You're going to end up with some enemies at the end, and they take a while to come out, so we've got time to run around and collect just like before, but now we've got double the firepower. There's some rifted copters coming in. I'm just going to overdrive my towers just to be sure, and now we've got a few enemies left at the end. I'm going to do the same thing as before, run around and just collect all the mana. Okay, I'm back in the middle again with all the mana. The last enemies are spawning. Same deal here. Gonna just start dumping some DSTs down on this beam, and there are some other things that I would like to get down for this wave. So I'm gonna put down another 4 DSTs. It's kind of the pattern here. 4 DSTs and some other stuff. That's sort of the game plan here. That looks good. I'm covering 2 staircases in the front on the north side of the map with each of these. That way they can target 2 positions that the dragon might land in. Lots of coverage for when enemies spawn in too. And now I'm going to just swap in my EV Waller, wherever she is. There we go. And I'm going to try to lay down a wall or 2 real quick. 3DU EV walls here are going to do the trick. Let's try it. Nope. Alright, so I got 1 wall down, that's fine, and I'm going to be on my monk from here on out. The reason for that is because we're going to have to deal with some dark elves. They are rifted, and your defenses ignore them. They are not targetable by your defenses, so you have to kill them. That's the plan. We have to kill them ourselves. There's going to be some coming up from the south pretty soon here. There's 2 that spawn in for Wave 3. If you're on a builder, you're going to have a tough time, and they are going to mess you up if you're on a builder. But you do want to protect your DST stack from them because they will do some damage to your DSTs as well. So that's the Dark Elves. They're both dead now. They both went for that same wall. How very strange. But yeah, from here, I'm just going to boost the towers and run around and collect just like before. Alright, I'm back in the middle here with all the mana, and we've got an Ogre. That was awfully convenient to have that wall there. Ideally, I'd have both down. Just so happens that this guy, I think he's got some physical resistance. Maybe there was a physically immune Siren down there. If he came up the other side, I'd have to kite him around a little bit. Not that big of a deal, but it might be better to actually prioritize getting the walls down first rather than the reflects. But I like these reflects down sooner than later because sometimes those ogres chuck their rifted kobold at your stack, and that's no good. But either way, that's the game plan here. More DSTs going down, hopefully finishing the build this wave. If you don't finish it, that's fine. We've got another wave, another build phase to take advantage of. So I'm going to lay down these last 2 DSTs here. And I've got plenty of space on the beam left to do that, along with plenty of mana. The rest of this mana can go into upgrading the buff beam and then some of the DSTs. So I am going to drop down the last wall as a priority. Okay. And I'm going to call it there for building this phase. That's fine. The last build phase, all I'm going to do for the last build phase with that 6DU is I'm going to drop down a couple of darkness traps near the crystals because you're going to have some flyers coming in and they can get pretty close. If your DSTs are distracted by shooting ogres or anything else, they're not going to target the flyers. They're going to get close. You might get some chip damage on your crystal during the boss fight. That's what we're trying to avoid. So here's a Dark Elf coming in. Now, you're pretty safe on your tower stack. They do try to jump up and attack you like they've always done, and they just kind of do that little dance. There's a flyer there. I don't know what he's doing. He should be doing damage to the crystal. I'm not sure why he's just there. Maybe that was a bug. But yeah, they get pretty close if your DSTs are distracted by, say, a copter or a rifted ogre, which do take priority now, which is good, actually. We're going to take advantage of the fact that DSTs target rifted ogres as a priority. That's a big deal. But from here, you can just kind of ride the wave out, boosting your towers, and waiting for the enemies to spawn in, and then you can run around and collect mana at the end. Alright, I'm back in the middle. I've collected all the mana, the wave flipped over, and now all I've got left to build are my darkness traps to deal with those flyers here. I throw them up on these torches. It's not really a big deal where they go exactly. the flyer will trigger it, and then they'll get blinded, and it kind of acts as a mini stun. It's like a mini CC. It'll trip them up on the crystal, and they won't attack. I'm gonna max the beam out with all that mana I had, and now we're ready to go. The build is complete. All we've got to do now is G it up and play out wave 5. One thing I will say is it's kind of a priority to protect the tower stack from the Dark Elves, the Rifted Dark Elves. In general, you want to keep an eye on your DSTs and make sure those Dark Elves don't come over and chew them up, because they can, and they may. So be on the lookout for those Dark Elves. They are the enemies that you have to deal with directly. Everything else can be dealt with by your DSTs. They are going to chop up your walls a little bit, so my walls are taking some damage. I've got plenty of mana. See, the DSTs do target these flyers, but they get pretty close. That flyer did do some damage to the crystal there. Spit a fireball at it. That may happen. It's not a big deal if it does. I'm going to just upgrade these walls. One. Yeah, you're not going to lose a crystal to one shot from a flyer, but you know what I could do, actually? You could do is move those darkness traps back a little bit. So maybe they could go, I don't know, here or so. Might be better. But yeah, that's been my experience. Every once in a while, a flyer will do some chip damage to a crystal. I don't know. I'm mostly prioritizing the DSTs angled the way they are so that they burn down the boss fast, because generally speaking, that's the big priority. You don't want the boss to be up for very long. You want him to die pretty quick. So right now, I'm a little concerned about Dark Elves. I'm keeping an eye on my map, and I'm waiting to see them spawn in so I can deal with them myself. That way they don't make it to my towers, and they might chew up my walls a little bit too. I do think it's a good idea in general to keep your DSTs boosted. That way they can kill the Rifted Ogres pretty quick. They deal physical damage, and Rifted Ogres are pretty tough. These walls also come in handy if you do happen to get a physical Siren that spawns in and gives a Rifted Ogre physical immunity. These are all physical damage. Fortunately, you're on a monk with a Draketooth. You've got fire damage, so you can deal with that by DPSing the Ogre yourself. That has happened to me before. It's not often that it happens, but it can happen. In those cases, those walls come in clutch, and you have to deal with that Ogre yourself. I'm just going to run around and collect this at the end of the wave here. We've got some time. Enemies are taking their time to come in. This mana, all of this is going to be bonus mana for just upgrading some of the DSTs. I've got the beam maxed out already. That's a top priority for sure. But yeah, that's all going to be for just, I'm going to level this row of DSTs because they're going to have better coverage of the dragon, and I'm going to hang on to some of this mana here just in case I need to run over and pop a quick upgrade during the boss fight on one of these maps, on one of these walls. It could happen. You never know. I'm going to hang on to it just to be able to be versatile, or maybe, you know, a Dark Elf comes over and chews up one of these DSTs, drop an upgrade on it, boom, and it'll be back up to full health. So I'm going to cut to the boss actually coming in. All right, here he is. I drop a tower boost, hero boost, and then I run over to the side that he's spawning in on and shoot him. That's been my consistent way of knocking him the first time he flies off, while also having a boost down on my towers. He's going to spawn in the middle. That's great. We can do a ton of damage to him here, assuming that my DSTs actually target him. That's the issue. There we go. Yeah, the whole back row of DSTs is just hammering away, and he's going to fly away now, so I'm going to go over and knock him on this side. There we go. Up, DST's taking some damage. Down goes one of my DSTs. See, that's sort of the main issue. If you have to deal with these Dark Elves, you have to deal with them yourself. Drop another boost. Just try to protect your stack mid-fight and hop over the fireballs. That's going to happen. And we can go over and do some more damage to him. I do recommend running Vitality on your monk, on your boost monk. It's going to help. It's going to help quite a bit. So we did lose a DST. That's fine. Oh, he's going to breathe fire. This is some big damage here. We can get a lot of damage in on him. Yeah, he hits you pretty hard, too. Be careful when he breathes fire. And I'm going to follow him. He's going this way, so I am going to knock him again. And then I'm going to check on my DSTs. Make sure they're okay. Make sure I'm not going to lose another one for with a Dark Elf attacking. I'm just going to upgrade that one. It was a little low. I'm going to boost. I'm going to actually tower boost. And then I'm going to run over and do some damage to the dragon myself here as well. It's kind of an intense fight. It's a little bit short-lived. When he goes to either side, it looks like he takes more damage. You've got a bunch of DSTs hammering, and no matter where he goes, he takes quite a bit of DST damage. You can see I lost a DST, and it was still okay. even with lowered stats comparatively. I know a lot of people don't have super high-end gear, like I was showing with my 8K power on my apprentice, but that's the fight. And you do get a fusion Draketooth here, if it'll show. There we go. 245. That's my best by a long shot. Don't expect to get a 245 off the bat. That's my best Draketooth. Wow, I was not expecting a 245. Yeah, a regular Draketooth here as well. And another thing you'll definitely want, if you don't already have one, is a striking gemstone. I'm going to take you through a build for each of the maps to get each piece of that fusion armor. They each come from a different map. I'm going to show you wave 23 starts for each of the maps to get each piece of primitive to make fusion DSTs. But first, I'm going to level my my brand new 245. That's crazy. I was not expecting to get such a good one. The ones that I've gotten so far are like 216 and 211, I think, and 213. I've gotten a bunch doing this build. 216, 213, 216. Yeah, so 245 I'm pretty happy with. I'm not going to lie to you. One thing I'll talk about that's really important is to, when you upgrade these, it's a little confusing. No matter what damage type you upgrade on these synthesized weapons, they're going to deal fusion damage. So level up the normal damage type you would use for that hero. So if it's a Demon Horns or a Slicer, you would level up either melee, or for a Slicer, you level up melee damage. For a Demon Horns, you level up ranged damage. For a Blaster, also ranged damage. Don't level up fusion damage on those items because it's gonna reflect elemental damage like we had in 1.1. So for this weapon in particular, I would be upgrading if it were normal fire damage for the elemental damage because it's a boost mug. I'm going to do that here as well. I'm going to upgrade fusion damage. Obviously, you want a max projectile count, but upgrade for your Draketooth fusion damage, not ranged, and if you're on a Demon Horns, ranged. If it's a Slicer, melee. If it's a Blaster, ranged, and so on. A Spitfire could go either way, but level them like you would have the normal ones where you prioritize the stat with whatever scales. So like if it's attack, it would scale with melee or ranged, and then if you're running a boost monk, elemental. But yeah, I'm going to take my 245 and run here. I'm going to upgrade that. That's my new main weapon here. I'm surprised I got that for this run. Don't expect it to be that good every time, but that's the idea here. So I'm going to G it up, head back to the tavern, and we're going to jump into getting our pieces of primitive now. Each piece of the fusion primitive set's going to come from a different map. The helmet's the weird one. So for the helmet, we can either go to Deeper Well, Ancient Mines, or Lava Mines, but it's got to be a wave 25 clear. That can be Massacre, that can be Nightmare, that can be Insane, any difficulty, but it's got to be a wave 25 clear for survival, or any Act 1 map, campaign wave 5. So I think the easy choice here is going to be Ancient Mines. Full link to the patch notes in the description. If you want to check where everything comes from, I'll leave a link to the patch notes in the description to check out. But I think Ancient Mines is the play here for the helmet. That'll be an easy run. The chest has to come from Glitterhelm, but you could either get it from a wave 14 clear or a wave 25 clear, either of the pet waves. Also Act 3 campaign, wave 5. So the chest will be the tough one. That's where I'll start. And the gloves come from Magus Quarters. That's another easy one. Wave 14 clear or wave 25 clear. Also any Act 1 map for campaign. The gloves are easy because Magus is an easy run. You can use the same build as you would non-rifted. I covered a build that works. Same thing with Ancient Mines. But and the boots. The boots come from Endless Spires, either wave 14 cleared or wave 25 cleared. And any Act 1 or any Act 2 campaign map, wave 5 also. The most important thing here is getting a full set. I'm going to show it from wave 23 starts for Massacre, Survival, Hardcore, Rifted, for all of these pieces, but if you have to jump down to Nightmare just to get 1 or 2 pieces or whatever and complete the set, that's fine, because if you come back with Fusion DSTs, you're going to smoke these maps easily. I'm doing it with regular DSTs just to show it's possible, and I'm going to give builds for each from a wave 23 start Massacre, Survival, Hardcore, Rifted, but feel free to jump down to a wave 12 start or Nightmare if you have to. Okay, Glitterhelm, Rifted, Hardcore, Massacre, wave 23 start. Gonna start off with the chest from Glitterhelm. I think that's gonna be the hardest one by a long shot. So I did gear back up for this, and I'll just show my stats for what it's worth. You know, try it with your stats, see how it goes for you. If you need to scale it down to wave 12 starts or Nightmare, go for it. The full set is way more important, but just going to cycle through my stats. That's what I've got. So I'm going to start with some DSTs here in the middle. And I'm going to go with 8 DSTs. I'm also going to run a striking gemstone on my boost monk. These first 4 DSTs, the right side aim arrow is going to point at the spawn door on the east lane. So not the one closest to me, but the one a little farther from that. These 4 DSTs, that's how I'm going to aim them. Okay, the next 4 DSTs, I'm going to aim in the opposite direction. If you've seen my Wave 23 start for non-rifted for this is very similar. Just 8 DSTs instead of 4, but I'm going to aim the right side of the aim here at that far off sort of lava fall, the one on the left. These 4 DSTs are going to be aimed in that direction to cover the south lane, the south portion of the map, rather. Last one going down there, and then I'm going to throw a 5DU buff beam down here just to buff up all these DSTs. 5DU buff beam is going to be plenty. Just make sure they're all on. Looks good. And then I'm going to max that out right away. Okay, let's head to the south lane first. I'm going to drop an ensnare aura here to help out with the copters and probably just the flyers, really. The copters aren't a big deal. You'll see why. And then I'm going to start with some auras over here. At the beginning of this bridge, I'm going to drop an ensnare and an electric aura, and that's it. No need for a strength drain. I'm not going to use walls for this build. I'm going to drop in front of those auras an inferno, a gas trap, and an explosive trap, and then a darkness trap a little bit farther back. And then I'm going to drop a buff beam to buff all of this stuff up. 3 level ups on the buff beam, 2 on the explosive, 2 on the inferno, and 2 on the electric aura. And then I'm going to head on over to each of the lanes and do the exact same sort of setup, basically. And I'm just trying to slam as much damage and crowd control in each of these lanes as possible to help burn down the trash a little quicker. The explosive, I'm going to tuck the explosive up over here. That way a Jin can't get it, but it'll peek into the lane a little bit. The trigger will, at least, so it'll trigger more. Darkness going down back here as well, and a buff beam. 1, 2, 3 on the buff beam. I'll do 2 on the inferno, 2 on the electric aura, and 2 on the explosive trap. Next up is going to be the east lane. And for this one, we're going to take advantage of this little nook here. An electric and an ensnare here for the auras. And then the traps on the crack over next to it. An inferno, gas, and I'll drop the darkness right here as well. Why not? And then the explosive I can kind of hide up here. And right behind that rock. And I'm going to go ahead with a buff beam here as well. And buff everything up. 3 on the buff beam, 2 on the inferno, 2 on the electric aura, and 2 on the explosive trap. Finally, I'm going to finish off the center of the build here with an ensnare and electric aura, just like the other lanes. And I'm going to do a darkness trap, a gas trap, and an inferno. And I'll just do 1 level on each of those here, because we've got a lot of DSTs here to take out the enemies coming in on the center. And I'm going to spread this mana around all my DST stack, and that's the build. So that's the complete build there. The DSTs are going to do a lot of work here for us. I'm going to just dump it on the DSTs as evenly as I can. And I'm going to swap in my boost monk here, wherever he is. And I'm going to run a striking gemstone on him, because we're going to buff the DSTs on him as our active hero. But first, here's the trick. On your apprentice, overdrive, swap to the monk, G up, drop a tower boost, and where's the ogre? There's 1 random ogre spawn. He's on the south side of the map. I might have to go tag him a little bit. Yeah, watch for the ogre. He's about half HP, and it looks like he's taking some more damage. Will he make it to the crystal? Nope, he died. So, in my case, he went down, and I didn't have to leave the tower stack. Now, if you had less power on your DSTs and you were less faithful of them taking down that ogre before he could do some damage, I would have gone down and killed him myself with my fancy new Fusion Draketooth. So you can leave the stack and kill an ogre if you have to. But the rifted ogre that spawns in the beginning of the wave, that's the big factor for whether or not you're going to succeed. he eats walls, so it's not worth having walls, and he basically two-shots your crystal, so you don't want him to get to the crystal, but you don't want walls down there because they're just going to go down anyway, and it's a waste of DU. So I keep an eye out for that ogre. I overdrive my towers in the beginning and let them burn him down. If he spawns on the south, that's the sketchiest lane. You may have to go tag him and take him out yourself, or not. Like in my case, where I didn't have to leave the tower stack, but that's basically how the waves run. They run really fast. Occasionally, a crystal will take some chip damage because the sirens may make the enemies immune to your CC a little bit, but they never get taken. My crystals, I never lose a crystal, rather. So at the end of the wave here, we've got some flyers coming in, and then we'll have to go hunt down some Rifted Dark Elves because your DSTs can't target them. They are immune, but we can kill them ourselves. So that's sort of the end of Glitterhelm becomes this weird little mini game where I have to go hunt down Dark Elves. And they're pretty easy to kill. They're camping a crystal. I don't know which crystal they're at, so I have to go look for them. But they'll be swinging away at a crystal and doing basically no damage or anything. They can't attack the crystal. And this is what they'll do. They'll try to kill you. You can stand on the crystal and you can take them out yourself here with your Draketooth. And then I'm going to watch the map and see where the next one spawns in. I can see that I've got one peeking out on the east. So now I've got at least two on the east crystal. But that's the gist here at the end. Just jump on the crystal and take them out. If they join you on top of the crystal, you can bat them off with your melee attacks. But that's Glitterhelm. That's how I've been running this. I've been farming up pieces quite a bit here. I've gotten several, and it's been really consistent for me. If you don't have as much power on your DSTs and they can't take the ogre out fast enough for you, you might either have to go take that ogre out yourself on your monk or drop it down to a wave 12 start. Either way, try the build out. Let me know how it goes. I'm just going to finish up here with these Dark Elves, and then I'll cut to the next wave. I'll just show the beginning bursts of the waves maybe to just show you what could happen if the ogre comes out at a different lane. Okay, so that's the last Dark Elf. Now, I do want to show my upgrade priority here, and what I would do. You know, you could really just repair everything and dump the rest of that mana into the DSTs. I think that's what I'll do. Nothing really needs a repair per se, but the DSTs are going to be the main thing in terms of whether or not this build is actually successful for you. So I'm going to leave all this stuff alone, take all this mana that I got from each of the lanes, and I'm going to dump it as evenly as I can into the DST stack. Yeah, I've already got the mana here, and I think that's going to be sort of the best way to go in terms of making sure that the ogre does get taken out in a timely enough fashion to not eat a crystal, ideally. So all the mana going into my DST stack here, and they're all one level from max. So hopefully you get that as well. That's pretty good. I'm going to swap over to the Apprentice and run the same game plan here. Boost it up. Where's the ogre? He is on the north lane, and it looks like he's clogged up a little bit. My DSTs are targeting him. I did shift over on the stack here onto these ones because these four will be targeting the north lane, and the ogre is down. So that is the game plan here. From here, it's all the same, so I'm going to cut to the end of the build. Okay, that time the ogre spawned in the lane closest to me, and he died in like 2 seconds, if that. That's ideal. You want that. The best RNG for that ogre to spawn would be in one of the close lanes, ironically, because he'll die super fast. But that was the start of my wave 25. Just going to cut it to the end here. It's the same play for each wave. Okay, that was the last of my Dark Elves that I had to hunt down for the win, and my North Crystal took some chip damage from something, made it, took a whack. That usually does happen. One of my crystals will take a bit of damage. I never lost a crystal, hanging out on the stack, boosting with the striking, and making sure the ogre goes down. It's been remarkably consistent for me, but if it's not for you, and you want to try the build out, just go down to wave 12 for a wave 12 start, or Nightmare even. But here's my chest. Not too bad, missing a range roll, but I'll take it. So that is our primitive chest acquired. Let's move on to the next piece. The next hardest piece, I think, is going to come from the Endless Spires. This build is going to run pretty similar to the one you just saw for Glitterhelm. Similar premise. we'll want to use, instead of a striking, we'll use a speedy. And I'm basically going to do another very similar strategy with this where I use some DSTs and I boost them with my apprentice for the start of the wave, but we're going to stash these 8 DSTs down here. Shout out to Red Moon Might for, I think he showed me this one, where you can stash DSTs down here. So that's what we're going to do. The first one I'm going to put down, I'm going to aim the right side of the aim, right at the middle of that spawn-in counter thing right there. Just going to split that in half with the right side of the aim. That's going to cover everything that comes out of that lane, as well as some other coverage for the other lanes near it, and the copter lane on the left. Those two there, and for these two, I'm going to aim them a little different, just slightly different. If I can put it down, I'm kind of using the wall as a reference. I'm going to aim the right side of the aim for these on the torch, right there in the middle of the screen, the torch. I'm going to touch that with the right side of the aim for these two DSTs. Same deal here, just the right side of the aim on that torch for these two DSTs. I'm going to just barely touch that wall on the left where it ends on the left side of the screen there, just barely. That's going to cover a copter lane pretty nicely. And same deal here with this one, just going to barely touch the wall on the left there. This wall here, just barely touching it on the left. And then for the last two DSTs, I'll have them just barely covering. There's a little pillar on the top of the stairs here on the left side of the screen right now. There's a little square pillar right there. I'm just going to barely touch that with these last two. That's going to cover the lane, just barely though, and then it'll cover a big chunk of the rest of the map. So those DSTs are going to provide quite a bit of value. So I'm going to drop a 5 DU buff beam here now and hit all these towers with that buff beam. Just going to double check the corner towers to make sure we're all in. Yep, looks good. Okay, and I'm going to max this beam out right away. Gonna head on up to the crystal right above those DSTs, and because of the placement of the beam, what I can do here is drop an ensnare aura, and I'm just gonna barely have it touch, just barely touch on the bottom left of my screen there, the buff beam. So now this ensnare and electric aura combo is getting the buff beam, and when we camp that stack later and boost, we'll be boosting the damage on that electric aura as well. So I'm gonna drop an ensnare and electric aura here on this side, on each side of the crystals here, as close to the crystal as I can on this little ledge here, as far out as I can, just to have them cover the lane coming up. That'll be nice there. Same deal on the other side. Same deal. So they're going to cover the lanes really nicely. Now we're going to drop a bunch of traps. I'm going to do a darkness trap here on this side of the crystal. That's going to intercept any incoming flyers, and it'll probably drop some darkness down there as well a little bit. I'm not really sure on the vertical range, but it's mostly for the flyers. Same deal on this side. That'll take away any immunity to the electric auras, and I'm going to drop an inferno trap here and a gas trap. And then we're going to buff everything over here with a 4 DU buff beam. That looks good. So everything is on the buff beam now, and I'm going to max that out. And then I'm going to leave everything else alone up here. I'm going to swap in my Boost Monk and jump over to the DST stack with my Striking Gemstone and my Fusion Draketooth. Just going to double check that. Yep, that's my Speedy. So I'm going to level each of these DSTs 2 levels to spend the rest of this mana and get the most value out of it. There we go. Now on the Apprentice, going to overdrive, back over to the Monk, boost, got my Speedy on. I'm standing in the middle of my DST stack here, and I'm going to watch the map. There's a couple things I'm looking for here. I'm looking for the Ogres, and I'm looking for the Dark Elf Warriors that are going to find me. There's one, and he's going to jump around on top of the DST stack, and I'm going to kill him. Easy stuff. They don't really pose too much of a threat. Just don't forget to keep your towers boosted. But that's the game plan here. That's essentially how this wave goes. You can just hang out here. It's a little smoother than Glitterhelm, but it's the same principle. No walls. We don't need them. And we watch out for these Dark Elves. So that's pretty much how it goes. I'll cut to the end of the wave here. Here's something I was watching out for. Not quite the end of the wave yet. I've got some ogres coming up on the right side of the map, but the DSTs are going to take them out. Even if they both spawn in the same lane, the DSTs are going to deal enough damage to take them both out before they become a threat. Easy stuff. So yeah, all right. Actually cutting to the end of the wave now. Okay, towards the end of the wave, I've got one stray ogre coming out. I've got my speedy on still. I'm watching to see which towers are shooting, and I'll buff them. I'll move on to the front of the stack here to give those towers the speedy buff, hopefully, and they take it out, no problem. So I've got a few enemies left here. This is the same old story. These Dark Elves are confused. They don't know what to do with themselves, so they're going to swing at a crystal mindlessly. Now, you can fight them on the crystals if you want, or you could just pull them back to your DST stack. Either way, you'll have to do something similar to what we did at the end of Glitterhelm, which is to just run around and kill them and wait for them to spawn in. It's the same sort of thing. I'm not sure where he's going. He's heading down to the DSTs, I guess. Oh, they found me. So I'm going to go to the DST stack and hang out here and fight them down here to end the wave. Okay, I'm just going to run around and collect the mana here, and I'm going to save it all to just dump into the DST stack. The traps and auras held it down just fine. You could dump a level or two into them if you'd like, but I don't really think it's necessary. It's going to depend on your stats, I guess, but I think the most important priority here is making sure the DSTs do as much damage as possible to take out the ogres before they become a threat to your crystals. So I'm just going to take all this mana and dump it into my DST stack as evenly as I can. I think I got it all here, and let's just dump it in. Beautiful. That'll work right there. And from here, it's the same. This is a lot easier and smoother than Glitterhelm was. It's a very similar concept, and there's really not an RNG factor like there was with the ogres, where they spawned in on different lanes and I shifted around on the DST stack to prioritize certain DSTs with the striking bonus. That doesn't really apply here. I don't need to do that here. It's just hanging out in the middle of the stack, keeping them boosted, and killing the occasional Dark Elf that finds me. That's the run, so I'll cut to the end from here. Alright, I'm at the end of wave 25 here. One thing I will caution you toward is waiting a bit at the very end by your DST stack to make sure that the wave is actually over and all you actually have left are Dark Elves, because what's happened to me the last couple waves is a Rifted Ogre spawned like the very last second, like 6 enemies left, I think, was the one that just spawned, and an Ogre came out and I wasn't on the DST stack. I had to rush back to it and drop a boost, but be on the lookout for that. You may get a surprise Ogre at the end, and this guy likes to get stuck here. I don't know what his deal, and he's dead. All right, I guess he's been there for a while, and I've got one more coming in. He seems confused, doesn't know which way to go to come to me. I'll find him. But that's going to do it for Spires here. My last enemy. Just going to kill him, and then we've got ourselves, what was it, the gloves? One thing about clearing a wave 25 is you actually get 2 pieces. I don't think I mentioned that. You get a piece for whatever set you're going for and a piece for another set. So in this case, it's a minor helmet, power, range, rate. Could be useful. Yeah, we were going for the primitive boots here. Power and range, meh. So, but that's the farm here. That's not a bad DPS piece, actually, if you wanted to use the Rift Armor. But we've got our boots. Let's G it up, head back to the tavern, and talk about the next 2 pieces of our primitive set. The next 2 pieces come from easy maps. They're both pretty easy. You could go for either one first. I'm just going to jump into Magus just because. And it's the same build that I would run, not Rifted. The only thing, this is a very minor thing that I would change, that I do change for this anytime I do run it these days, which is pretty rare, is I have gas traps, right? I have gas traps, but I put them in my original build. I had them here. I put them here now because they see the copters there. So I'll just do a quick rehash of that build. On the second crack here, I do drop a gas trap, and I'll just slap one down in the middle up here, and on this little crack right there, I'm going to blaze through this. If you've been on my channel for a bit, you've seen this build before. This is nothing new, so it's more a matter of remembering it. Stuff it in the corner there for that node, a 3DU wall, boom. And one more. I'll do the reflects first. A couple of 2 DU reflect walls usually go here. Who knows if these are actually necessary. I'm blazing through this. This is a really easy map. This is one of the first farm maps that you do when you're coming into Massacre Survival. Right in the middle of the stairs there, Ensnare Electric and Strength Drain, just because that's what I've always done. Who knows if it's even necessary? It doesn't really matter. This is a pretty easy map to sort of overrun with defensive power. Another 3DU wall going down here. What else do we do? Oh yeah, towers. I do inside of the Ensnare Aura. I'll do my first Flame Burst. These are all going to aim straight. One more there. And in a line as straight as possible, hopefully. One more here. And then I do 4 DSTs behind it. Sort of like this, on the crack on the right side. And I aim this one. I aim it the left side. I'll split between those 2 spawn doors. That'll work. Seriously, this is an easy farm. It's pretty fortunate that half of the primitive set comes from easy maps. I'm gonna mirror those 2 DSTs with 2 more DSTs on the right side, and there we go. And for the waves, it's very similar. I'm gonna play it on the Boost Monk Speedy Gemstone, and I'm gonna hang out and kill the occasional Dark Elf Warrior that rushes over to try and kill me. I'm gonna swap in my Beamer EV here as well and drop a 5DU beam if memory serves. I think it's technically possible to get these all on a 4DU beam, but I don't feel like trying all that. There we go. And I'm just going to assume that's on there. Max that bad boy out. We've got 3DU left, so I'm going to drop some 1DU reflects here. Bada bing. Bada boom. And 1 for the bag, just in case some spiders actually do land back there. Who knows? Okay. It's not very straight. Don't care. I'm going to swap over to my Boost Monk again. Speedy Gemstone, same deal here, and we've got quite a bit of mana left over, so I guess I'll spread it out. I don't know. Let's throw a few on, let's do 2 on the Strength Drain, 2 there, 1 on each wall. Why not? Might lose these walls, don't really care. And I'm going to dump the rest of this into my tower stack, but I'm going to prioritize the DSTs. So, yeah, they'll get the lion's share of the mana. We've got enough for, I'll do 1 there, 1 there. Okay, might as well overdrive on the Apprentice. No reason not to kick the wave off, G it up, drop the tower boost, and this one's, there's really nothing you have to pay attention to. You're going to steamroll this. You can have lower stats and you'll steamroll it. The copters get locked down by the gas and the ensnare. The occasional Dark Elf Warrior is going to swarm you on your tower stack, but it's an Act 1 map, so they're not nearly as difficult. And it's this easy here on Magus. I'm sure you can imagine Ancient Mines is even easier, but that is the run for Magus. I'm going to be honest, it's going to be pretty dull from here, so I'm just going to cut to the end. This is an easy farm. Okay, that's the win on Magus Quarters. I did, at the end of Wave 23, I sold the walls and the Strength Drain and the 2 big reflects in front of the crystal. I sold them and I added an Inferno here and an Inferno Darkness on this side, Inferno Darkness on the other, just barely touching the beam, just to add some damage. And then the Darkness was like an just in case kind of thing. If something made it to the crystal didn't take any damage. You could probably steamroll this even faster with a more efficient build. Maybe you could get rid of these 3 flame bursts and sell this back, reflect wall, and drop 2 more DSTs for 6 total, and you know, have them mirror one and the other each way, and maybe get rid of the darkness and drop some more damage, maybe a couple explosives, who knows. But yeah, that's the run. Easy stuff. Magus is an easy map. It's an easy run. So we got some primitive gloves here, and 290, no range, but hey, those are gloves for our primitive fusion set. Easy peasy. And we also get a helmet here. It's Militia, I believe. Let's get that out of the way. Yeah, Militia's a good set. I think that'll be the one that I go for next. no range on that one as well. But yeah, you get the militia helmet from here as well as those primitive gloves. So that's Magus Quarters for you. Look at that giraffe. 304, not too shabby. So I'm not even going to cut it here. I'm just going to go back to the tavern and jump right into Ancient Mines because I pretty much have the same feeling about Ancient Mines. It's another really, really easy run. It's Act 1. Unless you're just starting out farming Massacre Survival Hardcore, this is going to be a pretty easy go. And I'm going to just set up my normal build. I'll start with the same exact build, see how Wave 23 goes, and then I'll maybe delete the walls and add some more damage if they're completely unnecessary. Who knows? But I am going to make a very slight change to the build that you may have seen on my channel previously if you've been on the channel for a while. And that is that I am going to have both a gas and darkness trap up here to CC the copper lane. I don't even know if it's necessary, honestly. We'll find out. But that's the only difference, and then I trim back the tower stack a bit. I do 3 flame bursts and 3 DSTs instead of 4 DSTs and 2 flame bursts. But a 5 DU wall over there, I believe it was, and a 4 DU wall here. I'm going off of memory. You're going to be able to steamroll Ancient Mines. It's a pretty easy run. I know I'm on my beamer here dropping walls. Let's see how that goes. I don't need the wall or EV. I've got my beamer walls. Good enough. I think that was it here, right? And then I'm going to drop some towers. Jeez, look how far back these ores go. I don't know. This is kind of arbitrary. I'll go pretty far back. I'll go on this little crack here for the flame burst. First one straight ahead. The second one angled. I'll just barely cover that side. That way I've got more coverage over here. And then I'll drop one more flame burst tower on this side. Same sort of principle. Better coverage on the right. And it'll cover the wall on the left. And then let's do just a row of DSTs right behind them. They can basically be dead on. And I don't think that'll be a problem. I guess I'll just make sure that... Oh yeah, they cover everything. They're so far back. Yeah, that's totally fine. They can just be straight ahead. The farther back they are, the better coverage they are, because the wider the aim goes if they're farther back for the rest of the map, if that makes sense. I'll angle this one to the right a little bit, and then we can drop a 4DU buff beam and a couple of reflect walls. Let's make sure that's 4DU. It is. Everything is buffed, right? Alright, and max that out. I guess I'll do just the usual here. A couple reflects. I'm sure they'll be handy as well. And I dropped the walls on my beamer, but it's Ancient Mines, and I've got nearly 4K for it on my beamer EV, so let's roll with that. Let's see how it goes. I'm sure we'll be just fine. In the last run, it was mostly the Dark Elves that did damage to the walls anyway, and I have a feeling that's going to be the same thing here. It's not like an ogre is going to be my concern chopping away at the wall. It'll probably be Dark Elves that do most of the damage. I'm going to prioritize the DSTs here, and you know, maybe this isn't the best build for this, but it's the one that I ran quite a bit for early Massacre Survival, and I know it works. You could maybe min-max damage and speed here by going a little bit less on the copter CC. I do see the copter coming in, so maybe that is necessary. Who knows? I am going to kill the Dark Elves that come to the tower stack. You kind of have to do that. Down goes the copter. What's at the wall? Anything? The walls are still full HP. Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be even smoother and easier than Magus. You just have to kill the Dark Elves. Same deal. So yeah, that's Ancient Mines for you. Unless anything interesting happens, I'm just going to cut to the end of the run. Okay, I'm coming up on the end of the run here. I'm about halfway through Wave 25. I cut back a bunch of stuff because it was pretty obvious that the walls were unnecessary, as well as the copter lane CC and a couple other things. So I threw an explosive and an inferno in each lane, and I moved the gas traps back a little bit. I also put buff beams on both of those stacks of traps, and I cut back to one reflect wall here. I don't even think that was necessary. just to try to speed things along. The only difference for the wave in terms of what you do in this case is all of the Dark Elves rushed toward me. None of them were stopped by the walls that were there, so they were all in my face, dancing around on top of the towers, not just the Dark Elves, the Rifted ones. And this is why I have one Reflect Wall, because you never know. But yeah, that's the run here. So that's the end of Ancient Mines, and it's our last piece that we need to complete our set of Primitive. That'll be the helmet. 292, all 4 tower stats. Not too shabby. That's pretty good. And what else did we get here? Some guard, gloves, again, a good piece. All 4 tower stats, I'll take it. So that was pretty good. But that'll complete our primitive set farm. Now, by any means, if any of these maps were tough, just complete the set. Come back with a full set of primitive. I guarantee that same build will work a lot better for you because primitive DSTs, or fusion DSTs, are going to hit a lot harder and do a lot more damage. But happy hunting. Yeah, that's what I would rush first. That set of primitive. Get some fusion DSTs rolling, get back to slapping some bosses around with Rifted enabled, and farming up the rest of the sets. So I think the best sets to get from here are probably a set of Militia to use for either Infernos or Flame Bursts. Maybe another set of Primitive for fusion buff beams would be cool. And I guess a set of Guard could be used for either walls, for EV walls, or electric ores, maybe. Not entirely sure yet, but I'll be going for probably another set of primitive and a set of militia first. That's my plan. Let me know what you're up to and what your thoughts are for that. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching.